The evening air held that particular chill that comes in late autumn, when the warmth of the day surrenders to the promise of winter. The Café Tilde Copyright's patio heaters glowed softly, creating islands of comfort along the sidewalk where diners lingered over their meals, reluctant to surrender the evening. Thomas Bradley sat alone at a small round table, a half-finished plate of pasta before him and a glass of wine he'd barely touched. At 39, he'd learned to enjoy his own company, though it hadn't always been that way. 3 years of single fatherhood had taught him many things, including the value of these rare quiet moments when his daughter Sophie was at her grandmother's house for the evening. He was a high school English teacher, the kind who actually remembered what it felt like to be 16 and confused about the world. His students loved him for it, though the pay had never been impressive. The beige sweater he wore was comfortable but worn at the elbows, and he debated whether this Café Tilde copyright was too expensive before deciding that sometimes you had to treat yourself. He was lost in thought, watching the pedestrians pass by, when a young woman approached his table. She moved hesitantly, her body language apologetic before she even spoke. She wore a red dress that had seen better days. The hem was frayed, and it didn't quite fit the weather. She had no jacket despite the cold, and her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail that looked more practical than stylish. "Excuse me, sir," she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the street noise. "I'm so sorry to bother you." Thomas looked up, meeting her eyes. They were blue and filled with a mixture of shame and desperate hope that he recognized from somewhere deep in his own past. "You're not bothering me," he said gently. She swallowed hard, her hands fidgeting with the small purse she carried. "I noticed you weren't. I mean, it looks like you might not finish your meal, and I wondered." She couldn't seem to get the rest of the words out. Understanding dawned on Thomas, and with it, a wave of compassion that tightened his chest. "You're hungry." She nodded, tears springing to her eyes. "I haven't eaten in 2 days." "I wouldn't ask, but her voice broke. "I'm sorry." "This is humiliating." Thomas stood up immediately, pulling out the chair across from him. "Please, sit down." "Oh, no, I couldn't. I insist," he said firmly but kindly. "Please." She hesitated, then slowly lowered herself into the chair, perched on the edge as if ready to flee at any moment. Thomas caught the waiter's eye and gestured him over. The young woman's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" "Ordering you dinner," Thomas said simply. When the waiter arrived, Thomas smiled. "Could we get the menu, please? And maybe some bread and water right away?" "Certainly, sir." The young woman stared at him in disbelief. "I just asked for your leftovers." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to," Thomas said, "but no one should have to eat someone else's leftovers when there's a perfectly good kitchen right inside." He extended his hand across the table. "I'm Thomas, by the way." She took his hand tentatively. Sarah Mitchell." The waiter brought water and a basket of warm bread. Sarah tried to reach for it slowly, maintaining dignity, but her hand trembled. Thomas pushed the basket closer to her. "Please, eat. There's no judgment here." She took a piece and bit into it, and the relief on her face nearly broke his heart. She ate 3 pieces quickly, then seemed to remember herself and slowed down, embarrassed. "When did you last have a real meal?" Thomas asked gently. Sarah wrapped her hands around the water glass. "Tuesday. I had a job at a diner, but the owner's daughter came back from college and needed work, so." She shrugged, the gesture trying for nonchalance but not quite making it. "I've been looking, but everything wants experience I don't have or references I can't give." "Where are you staying?" She looked down. "A shelter, mostly. Sometimes I sleep at the bus station when it's full." Thomas was quiet for a moment. "How old are you, Sarah?" 23. "I know I should have it more together by now." I wasn't judging," Thomas interrupted. "I was remembering. When I was 25, I was sleeping in my car. My wife had just left, took most of our money, and I was trying to finish my teaching degree while working 3 part-time jobs." Sarah looked up, surprised. "You were homeless?" "For about 4 months, yes." "I remember what it feels like. That particular kind of hunger that's not just in your stomach but in your whole body. The shame of having to ask for help. The way people look through you like you're invisible." "Yes," Sarah whispered. "Exactly like that." The waiter returned, and Thomas encouraged Sarah to order whatever she wanted. She chose carefully a soup and a sandwich, the cheapest items on the menu. Thomas ordered her the salmon instead, over her protests, along with the salad and a dessert. While they waited for the food, they talked. Sarah told him about growing up in foster care, about aging out of the system at 18 with no family and no safety net. She'd worked various jobs, but without a stable address or reliable transportation, everything eventually fell apart. She'd lost her apartment, then her possessions, then her dignity piece by piece. "I'm not on drugs," she said suddenly, as if defending herself against an unspoken accusation. "I don't drink, I just. Life kept knocking me down, and I haven't figured out how to get back up." "You're still trying," Thomas said. "That's what matters." A lot of people would have given up. The food arrived, and Thomas watched as Sarah tried to eat slowly, with manners. Even though he could tell she wanted to devour it, her attempts at dignity touched him deeply. "I have a daughter," Thomas said. "Sophie. She's 13. After her mother left, I was so lost. I didn't know how to be both parents, how to make ends meet, how to be enough for her." "But you know what I learned?" Sarah looked up from her meal. "I learned that we're not meant to do it alone. Every person who helped me, the colleague who let me shower at his place, the neighbor who brought us groceries she didn't need, the landlord who gave me 2 months to catch up on rent, they taught me that kindness isn't weakness, it's the strongest thing we have." "Why are you being so kind to me?" Sarah asked, her voice thick with emotion. "You don't know me." "That's exactly why," Thomas said. "Because someone was kind to me when I was at my lowest, and they didn't know me either. Because that's what we're supposed to do for each other. Because you deserve to be treated with dignity." Sarah put down her fork, tears streaming down her face. "I feel like I've been invisible for so long. Like I stopped being a real person and became just a problem to be avoided." Thomas reached across the table and gently covered her hand with his. "You are not invisible. You are not a problem. You are a young woman who's had an incredibly difficult start and is still trying. That takes more strength than most people will ever need to show." They sat together as the evening deepened, the cafe filled with copyright S lights growing warmer against the darkening sky. Thomas learned that Sarah had once dreamed of being a teacher herself, that she loved writing. Jane Austen was her favorite, that she'd taught herself basic coding at the public library, hoping it might lead to work. When the check came, Thomas paid it without ceremony. But he didn't stop there. He pulled out his phone and made the call. "Margaret, it's Tom Bradley." "Yes, I know it's late. Listen, I have a favor to ask. That studio apartment above your garage, is it still empty? I have a young woman here who needs a place to stay, someone to give her a chance." He listened, then smiled. "Thank you. Yes, I'll vouch for her completely." Sarah stared at him in shock as he hung up. "What did you just do?" "My colleague Margaret has a studio apartment she rents out. She's willing to let you stay there for 3 months, rent-free, while you get on your feet. After that, the rent is modest, well within reach if you can find steady work." "I can't accept that." "Yes, you can," Thomas said gently. "And there's more. The school where I teach needs someone in the front office. It's not glamorous answering phones, filing, helping with administrative tasks, but it's steady work with benefits. My principal owes me a favor. I can get you an interview." Sarah couldn't speak. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed out deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from years of held-back pain and exhaustion. Thomas moved his chair around to sit beside her, offering his handkerchief and a steady, reassuring presence. "It's okay. Let it out. You've been strong for so long. It's okay to let someone help carry the weight." When she finally composed herself, she looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "Why would you do all this for a complete stranger?" Thomas thought of his own dark days, of the people who'd reached out when he had nothing to offer in return. He thought of Sophie, and what he hoped others would do for her if she ever found herself lost and alone. "Because you're not a stranger," he said quietly. "You're someone's daughter, someone's friend, someone who matters. Because I can. Because it's right. And because someday, when you're steady on your feet again, you'll do the same for someone else." That's how we heal the world, of one act of kindness at a time. They left the cafe till the copyright together, Thomas insisting on calling a cab to take Sarah to Margaret's house. Before she got in, she hugged him tightly. "I'll pay you back," she promised. "Every penny." somehow pay it forward instead, Thomas said. That's all I ask. Months later, Thomas received the letter. Sarah had gotten the job at the school. She'd enrolled in night classes. She'd started volunteering at a homeless shelter on weekends, serving meals to people who looked exactly like she had looked that cold evening. The letter ended simply, "You saw me when I was invisible. You treated me like a person when I felt like nothing. You gave me more than food or shelter. You gave me back my humanity. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be the kind of person you believed I could be. Thank you for showing me that kindness isn't just something nice people do. It's how we save each other." Thomas pinned the letter to the bulletin board in his classroom, where his students would see it. Below it, he added a note of his own: "We rise by lifting others. Never forget that your compassion might be the only light someone sees in their darkness." Because that evening on the Café Tilde copyright patio, Thomas hadn't just bought Sarah a meal. He'd reminded Hira and himself that our worth isn't measured by what we own or where we sleep. It's measured by how we treat those who have nothing to offer us in return. And sometimes, the smallest gesture at treating someone with dignity when they expect rejection can change the entire trajectory of a life. That, Thomas believed, was the whole point of being human.